right? So are you ready to like really dig deep into sustainable weight loss? I mean, like way beyond those fad diets and the quick fixes that just never seem to work.
I am so ready.
Awesome. Okay, so, our amazing listeners have given us a ton of articles, guides, even expert opinions on this topic. So we're going to be your filter, extracting the best stuff.
Yeah, consider us your like personal knowledge miners, sifting through all the noise to find those golden nuggets of wisdom that'll actually help people achieve lasting results.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's start with like the big picture. Looking at all these sources, what were some of the like recurring themes that really jumped out at you?
It's interesting because despite all the different approaches and perspectives out there, was this one central idea that kept popping up, ditching the idea of like these overnight transformations.
Yeah.
And instead focusing on strategies that you can actually stick with for the long haul.
Make sense?
Yeah, it's all about understanding your body, and making changes that actually fit into your life, not the other way around.
So true. And, one thing that really blew my mind from these sources was this idea that like obsessing over the scale could actually be like holding us back. Have you ever felt that like you're making healthy choices, but then you step on that scale and you're just like, ugh?
Oh, totally. It happens to like pretty much everyone. And there's a good reason for it, But the scale, it's like this tricky little thing. It just gives you this like snapshot of your weight, but it doesn't tell you the whole story.
Right.
Like it can't tell the difference between fat loss and muscle gain, which is so important because as you gain muscle, you actually burn more calories even when you're resting.
Wait, so you're telling me gaining muscle can make the number on the scale go up?
Yes, but it's not a bad thing at all. I mean, muscle is way more metabologically active than fat, meaning it torches more calories even when you're just like chilling on the couch.
Okay.
Think of it this way, having more muscle, it's like having a higher powered engine in your car.
Okay.
It burns more fuel even when it's idling.
That's a great analogy. I love that.
Right.
Okay, so maybe the scale isn't always our best friend. What about those quick fix promises that we see everywhere? One article had this quote that really stuck with me. What's gained quickly is lost quickly. Why do these rabid weight loss methods usually backfire?
Well, imagine someone's like super dedicated, right? They go all in on this crazy restrictive diet, start working out like crazy every other day, trying to drop weight as fast as possible. Sounds committed, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But here's the thing. Such drastic changes are almost impossible to keep up. And when we really flash our calories, our bodies, they kind of go into like survival mode.
Survival mode. What does that mean for our like weight loss goals?
Well, our bodies are incredibly smart, right? So when they sense that we're not getting enough fuel, they can actually start breaking down muscle for energy instead of fat. Plus, it can like really mess with our hormones and our metabolism in the long run. So we might lose weight quickly, but it's often water weight and muscle, not the fat we actually want to target.
So it's like our bodies are trying to protect us, but it ends up like working against us in a way.
Exactly. And then when we inevitably go back to our normal eating habits, because who can survive on lettuce and water forever?
Right.
Our bodies, they try to replenish those lost reserves, which often leads to weight regain.
And that's the dreaded yo-yo effect that so many people struggle with.
It's the worst.
So how do we break free from this cycle of quick fixes and actually find strategies that stick?
I think that's where like shifting our mindset becomes super important. The key takeaway from all these sources is that we need to ditch that all or nothing mentality and really embrace the power of small, sustainable changes. It's like building a house, right? You need that solid foundation, a plan to create something that will actually last.
Yeah, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. But if we're not just relying on the scale, how do we actually track our progress, and know if we're moving in the right direction?
Well, the sources actually offer some really practical and insightful ways to measure progress that go way beyond just stepping on that scale.
Okay, I like that.
Think about how your clothes fit. Are your jeans feeling a little looser? Do you need to tighten your belt an extra notch?
Yeah.
Those are real world indicators that things are changing.
Oh, I love that it's something we can all like relate to and experience every day. It's not just about a number. It's about like how we feel in our own bodies.
Exactly. And another awesome method is taking measurements, like your waist, your hips, other areas. This gives you a much more accurate picture of fat loss, especially as you start building muscle, which can actually sometimes mask fat loss on the scale.
So it's like having a more detailed map of our bodies and how they're changing.
Exactly. And I remember one article even suggested the power of progress photos.
Oh, yeah.
Which might sound silly at first,
But
I can totally see how taking pictures of yourself at regular intervals could be super motivating.
Total. Sometimes we need those visual reminders to see the progress we might not even notice day to day.
Absolutely. It's about celebrating those non-scale victories, too.
Yes, I love that. Okay, so I'm already feeling like more empowered just thinking about these different ways to track progress. But what about setting realistic goals? I know I've been guilty of getting like way too ambitious in the past only to burn out, a few weeks later. How do we find that sweet spot between challenging ourselves and like setting goals that we can actually achieve?
Well, that's where the SMART goal setting method comes in, and the sources really break it down in a way that's super relevant to weight loss. It's basically a framework for creating goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay, break that down for me a little bit more. How does SMART actually like translate into setting weight loss goals that we can actually stick to?
Okay, so instead of just saying, I want to lose weight, a SMART goal might be something like, I want to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week by focusing on eating more vegetables and walking for 30 minutes each day. So it's specific, it's measurable, it's realistic, it's relevant to your overall goal, and it has a time frame.
I see. So it's about breaking down those like big, overwhelming goals into smaller, more manageable steps. And it makes sense that having a time frame gives us something to work towards and keeps us accountable.
Exactly. And remember, consistency is key here. It's about making those small changes day after day, week after week. It's not about perfection, it's about progress.
I love that. And speaking of progress, I remember one article really emphasizing the importance of building muscle for long-term weight management. I'll admit I used to be terrified of putting on like any extra weight, even if it was from muscle. But these sources totally changed my perspective on that.
It's such a common misconception, but it's so crucial to understand that muscle is like our metabolic powerhouse. The more muscle we have, the more calories we burn, even when we're just going about our day.
Okay.
It's like having this built-in fat-burning machine.
Okay, so it's not just about the number on the scale, it's about what's happening beneath the surface.
Exactly.
I love that analogy. It makes so much sense. It's like we're investing in our metabolism for the long haul.
Exactly. And building muscle isn't just about aesthetics. It has so many incredible benefits for our overall health and well-being.
Well, I'm definitely on board with the muscle building train now. But let's talk about another topic that come up a lot of the sources. Food. I've definitely fallen into the trap of cutting out entire food groups in the past, thinking it was like the key to quick weight loss. But honestly, it just made me feel miserable and deprived.
I think we've all been there, and the sources really emphasize that these restrictive diets, they're not only unsustainable, but they can actually backfire, leading to cravings, nutrient deficiencies and that dreaded yo-yo effect we talked about earlier.
Right.
Instead, they really advocate for a balanced approach that focuses on nourishment, not deprivation.
Okay, so what are some of the key principles for fueling our bodies for success that like really stood out to you from these sources?
Well, they all stress how crucial protein is for feeling full and satisfied, which helps prevent overeating.
Yeah.
They also highlight the importance of fiber, which adds bulk to our meals and aids digestion. And then healthy fats are essential for hormone production, cell function, even brain health.
So it's about finding that balance, between nourishing our bodies with the nutrients we need while still enjoying the foods we love.
Exactly.
What stood out to you about like the specific types of food they recommend?
I was fascinated by how much they emphasized whole, unprocessed foods.
Yeah.
Foods that are as close to their natural state as possible. Fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, healthy fats.
Right.
They're just packed with nutrients and fiber, and they help us feel fuller for longer.
Totally. And it makes sense that those foods would be more satisfying than like processed foods that are often loaded with added sugars, unhealthy fats, empty calories.
Absolutely. And another point that really resonated with me was the importance of listening to our bodies, like our hunger and fullness cues, instead of just eating because it's a certain time or because food is available. They encourage us to really tune into our internal signals and eat when we're genuinely hungry and stop when we're comfortably full.
That's such a mindful approach, and it makes sense that it would help us avoid overeating and make more conscious choices about what we're putting into our bodies.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a healthier relationship with food that's based on, listening to our body's needs rather than following external rules or restrictions.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective, and I love how these sources really emphasize that the best time to start our weight loss journey is when we feel genuinely ready, both mentally and emotionally.
Absolutely. It's about finding that internal motivation and that readiness rather than feeling pressured by external factors or societal expectations.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I think it's so important to recognize that everyone's journey is different, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Totally. It's about honoring our individual needs and finding what works best for us. And remember, it's okay to start small and build from there.
Okay, I'm feeling so much more confident and inspired after diving into this information with you. It's not about quick fixes or drastic measures. It's about creating a lifestyle that supports our long-term health and well-being. But before we move on, there's one more point I want to touch on that really resonated with me from these sources. They actually encourage us to embrace those occasional slip-ups or indulgences.
Yes, I love that.
Instead of beating ourselves up over a slice of cake or a missed workout, they actually encourage us to use those experiences as opportunities for learning and growth.
Exactly. They suggest asking ourselves, what led to this slip-up and what can I do differently next time? It's about approaching these situations with curiosity and self-compassion rather than judgment.
I love that he takes the pressure off and allows us to view these moments as part of the journey, not as setbacks or failures.
Exactly. And that's a perfect segue into another topic. We should explore the importance of movement in our everyday lives.
Yes, this is where things get really interesting because the sources don't just talk about hitting the gym or following a strict workout regimen. They actually highlight the power of incorporating movement into our daily routines, even in simple ways.
Totally. Like one article used the example of housework and childcare as forms of exercise, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we don't need fancy equipment or hours at the gym to be active.
Right. It's about finding ways to move our bodies throughout the day, whether it's taking the stairs, walking during our lunch break, or dancing around the kitchen while we cook dinner. It all adds up.
It all adds up. And speaking of adding up, there's one more important concept that the sources touch on that I think we need to explore, the idea of calorie deficits.
The calorie deficit, I know it's like a fundamental principle of weight loss, but I'll admit it can sometimes feel a bit confusing or overwhelming.
You're not alone. It's often misunderstood, but the sources do a great job of breaking it down in a clear and concise way.
I'm all ears. Let's unpack this concept and see how it fits into the bigger picture of sustainable weight loss.
Let's do it. So basically, a calorie deficit just means consuming fewer calories than your body burns in a day. It's like, spending less money than you earn, you end up with a surplus, right? Or in this case, your body taps into its stored fat for energy.
Okay, that analogy makes sense. But how do we actually figure out what our calorie deficit should be without getting too caught up in numbers and restrictions?
Yeah, that's where understanding our individual needs comes in. These sources suggest starting by calculating our basal metabolic rate, or BMR, which is basically the number of calories our bodies burn at rest, just to keep all our essential functions running smoothly.
Gotcha.
And there are some handy online calculators and formulas that can help us estimate this, taking into account things like our age, gender, height, and weight.
So our BMR is our baseline calorie burn, even if we were to just lay on the couch all day?
Exactly. But of course, most of us don't spend our days on the couch. So the next step is factoring in our activity level. Are we mostly sedentary, moderately active, or do we lead a very active lifestyle? The more we move, the more calories we burn, and that impacts our overall calorie needs.
I see. So our BMR is the foundation, and then we build on top of that based on how much we move throughout the day.
Precisely. And once we have a good grasp of our BMR and activity level, we can start thinking about a calorie deficit that feels sustainable and aligns with our goals. The sources generally recommend aiming for a deficit of around 500 calories per day for healthy and sustainable weight loss.
I'm guessing there's no magic number that works for everyone, right?
You got it. These are just general guidelines, and it's always best to talk to a healthcare professional or a registered dietitian to determine the best approach for our individual needs.
Okay.
They can take into account our medical history, lifestyle preferences to help us create a plan that feels right for us.
That's a great point. It's so important to personalize this journey and not get caught up in comparing ourselves to others or following a one-size-fits-all approach.
Totally. And speaking of personalized approaches, one of the things that really stood out to me from these sources was the emphasis on finding what works best for us when it comes to movement. It's not about forcing ourselves to do workouts we hate or striving for some unattainable ideal.
Oh my gosh, I've totally been there pushing myself to do those high-intensity workouts that everyone seemed to be raving about. But I always ended up feeling burnt out and discouraged.
The sources really encourage us to find activities that we genuinely enjoy and that fit into our lifestyles. It could be dancing, swimming, hiking, yoga, or even just taking a brisk walk in nature.
Yeah.
The key is to move our bodies in ways that feel good and sustainable.
It's about making movement a part of our lives, not another chore on our to-do list.
Exactly. And the sources also highlight the importance of listening to our bodies and respecting our limits. If we're feeling tired or sore, it's okay to rest and recharge. It's about finding that balance between challenging ourselves and honoring our body's needs.
I love that. It's a much more genuine and compassionate approach than the no pain, no gain mentality that we often hear.
And speaking of compassion, let's talk about the mental and emotional aspects of weight loss because these are just as important as the physical changes we're making.
I've definitely struggled with negative self-talk and comparing myself to others throughout this journey. These sources seem to acknowledge that these struggles are common, and they offer some great tips for overcoming them.
One of the things they emphasize is the importance of shifting our focus from what we're giving up to what we're gaining. So instead of dwelling on the foods we're limiting, we can focus on the delicious and nutritious meals we're enjoying.
Yeah, it's about finding joy in the healthy choices we're making rather than feeling deprived.
Exactly. And the sources also highlight the power of self-compassion. It's about treating ourselves with kindness and understanding, especially when we experience setbacks or challenges.
It's so easy to get caught up in self-criticism, but those negative thoughts can really sabotage our progress. How do these sources suggest we cultivate more self-compassion?
They offer some really practical tips like practicing gratitude for all the amazing things our bodies can do, focusing on our strengths and accomplishments, and surrounding ourselves with positive and supportive people. It's about shifting our inner dialogue from criticism to encouragement.
Those are such great reminders. It's so important to remember that we're all on a journey, and it's not going to be perfect. It's about progress, not perfection.
I couldn't agree more. And speaking of progress, let's circle back to the importance of professional guidance. Remember those unusual symptoms we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
The sources really emphasize that if we experience anything out of the ordinary, it's always best to check in with a doctor or a registered dietitian.
Sometimes we might brush off certain symptoms or try to self-diagnose, but it's so crucial to have that professional support and guidance, especially when it comes to our health.
Absolutely. And it's not just about addressing potential cost concerns. These professionals can also help us create a personalized plan that takes into account our unique needs and goals. So they can provide expert advice on nutrition, exercise, and behavior change strategies that are tailored to us.
It's like having a knowledgeable and experienced guide to help us navigate this journey and make informed decisions.
Exactly. And one thing I really appreciate about these sources is that they encourage us to view this journey as a collaboration with our healthcare providers. It's not about blindly following orders. It's about working together to create a plan that feels sustainable and empowering.
I love that. It's about taking ownership of our health and well-being while also seeking support and guidance when we need it.
Right. And speaking of support, the sources also highlight the incredible power of community and connection, especially when it comes to making lifestyle changes. Have you ever noticed how much easier it is to stay motivated when you have people cheering you on and supporting you along the way?
Oh, absolutely. I've definitely experienced that firsthand, whether it's a friend, family member, or even an online community of like-minded individuals. Having that sense of shared experience and encouragement can make all the difference.
The sources suggest exploring different avenues for finding the support, whether it's joining a local fitness class, connecting with others online, or even just talking to a friend or family member who shares similar health goals.
It's about creating a network of support that can help us stay accountable, motivated, and inspired on this journey.
Exactly. And one thing I found really inspiring about these sources is that they encourage us to view sustainable weight loss not just as a physical transformation, but also as a journey of self-discovery and empowerment.
I love that perspective. It's not just about shrinking our bodies, it's about expanding our minds and cultivating a deeper understanding of ourselves and our relationship with food movement and our overall well-being.
It's about embracing the journey challenges and using those experiences as opportunities for growth, learning, and transformation.
This deep dive has been so enlightening. I'm feeling so much more informed, motivated, and empowered to approach this journey with a fresh perspective. But before we wrap things up, there's one more fascinating concept that the sources touch on that I think will really resonate with our listeners. The idea of intuitive eating. Have you heard of this approach?
Absolutely. It's a philosophy that aligns beautifully with everything we've been discussing about sustainable weight loss and building a healthier relationship with food.
Well, I'm all ears. Let's dive into the principles of intuitive eating and see how it can support our weight loss journey in a holistic and sustainable way. So what exactly is intuitive eating? Is it just another diet in disguise?
That's a great question. And actually, it's like the complete opposite of a diet. It's all about rejecting those restrictive rules and food labels that we've been bombarded with for years.
Okay.
Instead of categorizing foods as good or bad, intuitive eating encourages us to view all foods as neutral and to make choices based on what our bodies truly need and enjoy.
So instead of focusing on what we should or shouldn't eat, we're tuning in to what our bodies are telling us.
Exactly. It's about rediscovering those internal cues that we might have ignored for so long. One of the key principles is honoring your hunger.
Okay.
This means paying attention to your body's natural hunger signals and eating when you're genuinely hungry.
That makes sense. But what about those times when we eat even though we're not physically hungry? like when we're stressed or bored.
Right. Well, that's where another principle comes in making peace with fullness.
Hmm.
It's about recognizing when you're satisfied and stopping when you feel comfortably full, even if there's food left on your plate. It's about retraining ourselves to trust our body's signals.
I could see how that could be a game changer. Instead of mindlessly eating, we're becoming more mindful of our body's needs.
And that mindfulness extends to like the entire eating experience. Another principle is discovering a satisfaction factor.
Okay.
This means finding joy and pleasure in the foods you choose to eat.
Okay.
It's about savoring each bite, appreciating the flavors and textures, and making mealtimes a positive and enjoyable experience.
That sounds so much more appealing than those restrictive diets that make you feel like you're constantly missing out.
It is. It's about reclaiming the pleasure of eating and nourishing our bodies in a way that feels good both physically and mentally.
Okay, I'm loving this approach so far. It seems like intuitive eating is all about like shifting our mindset and building a healthier relationship with food. But how does it actually like help with weight loss?
That's a great question. When we learn to trust our bodies, honor our hunger and fullness cues, and make peace with food, we naturally create a more balanced and sustainable approach to eating. This can lead to weight management over time without the need for restrictive diets or calorie counting.
It sounds like a more gentle and intuitive way to achieve our goals, but I imagine it still requires some effort and self-awareness.
Absolutely. It's a journey of self-discovery and learning to listen to our body's wisdom. The sources emphasize that it's not about achieving perfection overnight. It's about practicing these principles consistently and being patient with ourselves as we learn and grow.
I'm definitely inspired to explore intuitive eating further. It seems like a powerful tool for creating a healthier and happier relationship with food and our bodies.
It is. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. There are tons of resources available, including books, websites, and even registered dietitians who specialize in intuitive eating.
That's great to know. And as we wrap up this deep dive into sustainable weight loss strategies, I think it's important to emphasize that it's not about finding a quick fix or a magic solution. It's about creating a lifestyle that supports our long-term health and well-being.
I couldn't agree more. It's about making gradual changes, building healthy habits, and embracing the journey with patience, self-compassion, and a positive mindset.
This has been such an insightful and empowering conversation. I'm sure our listeners are feeling just as informed and motivated as I am.
I hope so. Remember, sustainable weight loss is a journey, not a destination, and it's a journey worth taking.
So well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it valuable and inspiring. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep exploring all the amazing things your body can do.